The year 2387 marked humanity's 200th year of imprisonment within the Sol system. Commander Park Min-ho stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, his weathered hands gripping the metal railing as he stared out at the vast emptiness of space. Beyond the asteroid belt, a faint shimmer in the darkness marked the hegemony's energy barrier. It was invisible to the naked eye, but every human knew it was there. The cage that kept them trapped like animals in a cosmic zoo. "Another patrol? Another day of watching our prison walls?" muttered Lieutenant Kim Nari from her sensor station. Her fingers danced across the holographic display, monitoring the same empty space they had watched for months. The routine was mind-numbing, but it was all they had left. Park turned to face his crew. 23 men and women who had never seen a world beyond Earth's solar system. Their parents had been born in captivity, and their children would likely die the same way. The Galactic Hegemony had made sure of that. "Sir, we've got a bogey coming in hot," Kim suddenly called out, her voice sharp with surprise. "It's broadcasting. Alien distress signals." The bridge erupted into controlled chaos. After 200 years of isolation, any alien contact was extraordinary. Park watched the tactical display as a small vessel streaked past the outer sensor grid, trailing plasma and debris. Its hull was twisted metal, scarred by energy weapons that had burned through armor plating like paper. "It's going to impact Mars," reported the navigation officer, Northern Polar Region, near the mining stations. Park made his decision quickly. "Set course for Mars. Maximum burn. Send word to Admiral Lee that we have a situation." Raced through space, her engines pushing beyond safe limits. By the time they reached Mars, the alien ship had already crashed into the frozen wasteland, carving a deep scar across the red planet's surface. The impact site was a crater of molten rock and twisted metal. Park led the boarding team himself, wearing full environmental suits as they descended into the wreckage. The alien vessel was unlike anything in human databases. Its design was organic, almost grown rather than built, with smooth curves that seemed to flow like water frozen in time. They found the pilot and what remained of the command center. The creature was massive, easily 3 meters tall, with 4 powerful arms and 3 eyes arranged in a triangle on its elongated head. Its skin was a deep blue-green, marked with silver patterns that seemed to shift in the light. "It's still alive," whispered Dr. Han Juan, the mission's xenobiologist. She had studied alien physiology for decades using only theoretical models. This was her first real specimen. The alien's eyes opened as they approached. It spoke in a voice like grinding stone, but the universal translator in Park's suit converted the words into English. "Human." "You're human," the creature said, its voice filled with something that might have been wonder or fear. "Yes, Park," replied, kneeling beside the dying alien. "We're here to help." The creature's laugh was bitter. "Help? Your species? Like mine was?" "Before they came. Who came?" "Who came?" Park asked, though he already knew the answer. "The hegemony." The alien gasped. "They told the galaxy. Your people were dangerous, violent, had to be contained. But we know, ... we know the truth." The creature's breathing was labored now, each word a struggle. "Your people, they think the hegemony quarantines, they eliminate. My world, ... burned. 17 billion souls, ... gone." Kim stepped forward, her translator struggling with the alien's weakening voice. "What do you mean? The hegemony maintains peace? They protect weaker species?" "Lies," the alien wheezed. "They are the Kithara. We're the Kithara, last of my kind. They came to our world, dead. Said we were too aggressive, too proud, would not submit. So they ... they burned our cities, poisoned our seas." Die. The revelation hit Park like a physical blow. For 2 centuries, humanity had believed they were quarantined for their own protection and the safety of other species. The hegemony had presented themselves as benevolent guardians, keeping the violent humans contained until they learned to be peaceful. "But why?" Han asked, her voice shaking. "Why would they lie?" Kithra's eyes were dimming, but it managed to focus on Park. Because they fear you, not your violence. Your unpredictability. Other species, they fight with honor. Rules, traditions, but humans. Humans fight to win. Any cost, any method, they have never faced. Anything like you. As the alien died, it pressed a small crystal into Park's hand. Coordinates, ... hidden caches, ... weapons left by, eliminated. 43 species, all destroyed. All who would not. Submit. The crystal felt warm in Park's palm, and he could see data streams flowing through its crystalline structure, coordinates, star charts, and something else. Hope the flight back to Earth was silent. Park stared at the crystal, his mind racing. Everything humanity had believed about there. The situation was wrong. They were not being protected. They were being prepared for extinction. Admiral Lee C. Oakman received the report in his office, overlooking the sprawling military complex that had become Earth's last line of defense. The aging admiral listened without interruption, as Park described. Their discovery? 43 species, Lee repeated, his voice hollow. All eliminated because they refused to submit. The hegemony isn't maintaining peace, Park said. They're maintaining control. And any species that threatens that control is destroyed. Lee stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. Millions of humans going about there. Daily lives unaware that their entire existence was a lie? We've lived as prisoners long enough, Lee declared, his voice hardening with resolve. It's time to break our chains. 3 weeks after the Cathora's death, the Use Defiant sat in the deepest part of Earth's shadow, hidden from the hegemony's watching eyes. Engineers had worked around the clock to install the experimental quantum drive, device that had never been tested beyond computer simulations. It was humanity's only chance to break free from their cosmic prison. Commander Park Min-ho stood in the engine room, watching the technicians make final adjustments to the strange device. The quantum drive looked nothing like the fusion engines that powered most human ships. Instead of metal and pipes, it was made of crystalline structures that seemed to bend light around them. "Sir, we're ready," reported Chief Engineer Kim Dejan, wiping sweat from his forehead. "I have to warn. We don't know what will happen when we activate this thing. The power readings are off the charts." Park nodded grimly. Better to die trying than live as prisoners forever. The bridge crew was tense as they prepared for the jump. Lieutenant Kim Nari monitored the hegemony's sentinel ships, massive alien vessels that patrolled the barrier around Earth's solar system. For 200 years, these ships had stopped every human attempt to reach the stars. "Sentinel patrol is 3 million kilometers away," Kim reported. "We have a small window." Park took his position in the captain's chair. Engage quantum drive. The universe twisted around them. Reality bent and folded as the Defiance slipped between dimensions, riding waves of energy that human science barely understood. The ship shuddered and groaned, but held together as they passed through the barrier that had caged humanity for so long. When normal space returned, they were floating in the void between stars. Behind them, the Sol system was just another point of light. They had done it. They were free. "Set course for the coordinates," Park ordered, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what they had accomplished. The journey to the Cathara homeworld took 6 days. As they approached the system, the crew fell silent. The planet hung in space like a broken jewel, its surface scarred by orbital bombardment. What had once been oceans were now poisoned wastelands. The atmosphere glowed with toxic radiation. "My God," whispered Dr. Hanjuan from the science station. "The entire planet is dead." They landed near what had once been the capital city. The buildings were melted sculptures of metal and stone, their original shapes lost to the heat of alien weapons. The streets were filled with ash that had once been living beings. 17 billion souls reduced to dust. Park led the exploration team through the ruins, their radiation suits protecting them from the poisoned air. They found the underground vaults 3 kilometers beneath the city, sealed behind doors that had withstood the planet's destruction. The first vault contained weapons beyond human understanding. Energy rifles that could cut through starship armor, shield generators that could stop nuclear blasts, and gravity bombs that could crush mountains. But these were just the beginning. "Captain, you need to see this," called Dr. Han from deeper In the complex, she was standing before a massive wall covered in symbols and images. It's a record of every species the hegemony has destroyed. The wall told a story of systematic genocide spanning 1,000 years. 43 different species, each with their own unique cultures and technologies. All eliminated by the hegemony's peace through strength doctrine. Kithara were just the latest victims. Each species tried to resist, Han explained, translating. The alien text? The Valkyrie fought with honor and lost. The Threndel used advanced technology and lost. The Morgeth tried diplomacy and lost. Every single one followed the same pattern. But the most disturbing discovery came from the deepest vault. Here, the Kithara had hidden intercepted hegemony communications, translated and archived for future generations to find. Park read the documents with growing horror. The hegemony. Leaders called humans the chaotic variable and the unpredictable element. It studied human history through captured transmissions, watching how humans fought their wars. What they saw terrified them. Other species fight with rules, Park read aloud from one document. They follow codes of honor, use predictable tactics, and accept defeat when overwhelmed. Humans fight with cunning, adaptation, and a terrifying willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. Another document detailed human tactics that the hegemony found incomprehensible. Guerrilla warfare, kamikaze attacks, the use of civilian populations as fighters, and the ability to turn any object into a weapon. The hegemony had conquered 43 species using the same basic strategy, but their own analysts admitted that those tactics would not work against humans. They're not keeping us contained because we're dangerous, Park realized, the truth hitting him like a physical blow. They're keeping us contained because we're unpredictable. Lieutenant Kim looked up from her datapad, her face pale. Sir, there's more. The hegemony has been preparing for our elimination for decades. They've been building special weapons, ships designed specifically to fight humans. They know we'll break free eventually. Dr. Han found additional records showing the hegemony's timeline. They plan to eliminate humanity within the next 50 years, once their preparations were complete. Every delay in human technological development bought them more time to prepare. We were never meant to be quarantined forever, Park said, his voice filled with cold rage. We were being saved for last because we're the hardest to kill. The return journey to Earth was silent, the crew lost in thought about what they had discovered. They carried with them not just alien weapons and technology, but the knowledge that their species was scheduled for extinction. The hegemony's peace was built on the bones of 43 dead civilizations, and humanity was next on the list. As Earth grew larger in the view screen, Park made a decision that would change the fate of both species. The time for hiding was over. The time for resistance had begun. The moment the Defiance's quantum signature appeared on hegemony sensors, the galaxy's most powerful military machine began to move. Within hours of Park's return to Earth, 12 massive alien fleets were already converging on the Sol system from different directions. Each fleet contained hundreds of ships, their hulls gleaming with weapons that could crack planets. Fleet Admiral Choi Daeho stood on the bridge of Earth's orbital command station, watching the alien armada approach through the tactical display. The old admiral had spent 40 years preparing for this moment, even though he had never truly believed it would come. Now, with enemy fleets closing in from all sides, he felt strangely calm. Sir, we're counting over 2,000 enemy vessels, reported his aide. Lieutenant Colonel Park Soyin. Her voice was steady, but Choi could see the fear in her eyes. They'll be in weapons range in 6 hours, Good Choi replied, surprising. Everyone on the bridge, send the signal to all stations. Initiate Protocol Fury. The protocol had been developed in secret over decades, a desperate plan that most military leaders thought was insane. It required humanity to appear completely defeated while secretly preparing for one massive counterattack. Everything depended on the hegemony believing they were facing a conventional battle. Across the Sol system, human ships began moving into what appeared to be defensive positions. The Earth Defense Fleet formed up near the Moon, their formations looking textbook perfect. Mars Defense Command prepared their orbital platforms. The asteroid mining stations seemed to shut down their operations and evacuate their crews, but appearances were deceiving. Inside the asteroid belt, thousands of mining ships were being converted into weapons. Their cargo holds were filled with nuclear charges, their hulls reinforced with alien technology recovered from the Cathara homeworld. Civilian transports were being fitted with military-grade weapons. Even the evacuation ships were armed and ready to fight. Commander. Song Hyeri climbed into the pilot seat of the mining vessel Lucky Strike, her hands shaking slightly as she ran through the pre-flight checklist. Around her, 50 other mining ships were preparing for their final mission. Each vessel was packed with enough nuclear material to level a city. "This is insane," muttered her co-pilot, Engineer Kim Tae-young. "We're going to ram alien warships with mining equipment," Hegemony expects us to fight like civilized beings, Song replied, her voice hard with determination. "They're about to learn that humans don't fight fair." The first phase of the Battle of Seoul went exactly as the Hegemony expected. Human ships moved forward in organized formations, firing their weapons in coordinated volleys. The alien fleets responded with overwhelming firepower. Their advanced energy weapons, cutting through human shields like paper. Human vessels began exploding in brilliant flashes of light. The Earth defense fleet seemed to crumble under the assault, their ships breaking formation and retreating in what looked like panic. The Mars platforms fired a few desperate shots before going silent. Within 2 hours, human resistance appeared to be collapsing. "Pathetic," commented Hegemon war leader Krelvash from his flagship. "These humans fight like all the others. No imagination, no adaptation. We will be home for the next cycle." But as the alien fleets closed in for the killing, blow, something changed. The retreating human ships suddenly stopped running and began moving in patterns that made no sense. Instead of forming battle lines, they scattered in all directions, forcing the Hegemony ships to spread out to pursue them. That was when the asteroid belt came alive. Thousands of mining ships, cargo haulers, and civilian transports emerged from hiding places among the rocks. They had been waiting for hours, their crews breathing recycled air and praying their improvised weapons would work. Now they streaked toward the confused alien fleets like angry hornets. "All units, this is Commander." Song Hyeri broadcasts on all frequencies. "Remember, we're not trying to win a battle. We're trying to send a message." The Lucky Strike and her squadron of mining vessels punched through the Hegemony's formation at full speed. The alien ships tried to target them, but the human vessels were too small and fast. They wove between the massive alien warships like fighters, but they weren't trying to engage in combat. They were trying to ram. For Earth, Song screamed over the cum as her squadron closed in on a Hegemony battleship. The alien vessel was 10 times larger than her mining ship, its hull bristling with weapons that could have destroyed her vessel with a single shot. But the aliens hesitated. All their centuries of warfare, no species had ever used suicide attacks as a primary tactic. The concept was so alien to their way of thinking that they couldn't process what was happening until it was too late. 50 mining ships struck the battleship simultaneously, their nuclear charges detonating in a chain reaction that split the massive vessel in half. The explosion was so bright it could be seen from Earth. It's a new star burning in the darkness of space. All across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human ships rammed alien vessels, turning themselves into missiles. Cargo haulers released clouds of debris that clogged alien sensors. Passenger transports broadcast false surrender signals before opening fire at point-blank range. The Hegemony fleets, which had been advancing in perfect formation, began to break apart in confusion. Their commanders had no protocols for dealing with enemies who fought without regard for their own survival. Every tactical manual they possessed was useless against an opponent who treated death as just another weapon. "What are these creatures?" transmitted one alien captain in panic. "They're using their own ships as bombs." The answer came from Admiral Choi, broadcasting on all frequencies. "We're humans, and we don't surrender." Captain Ojimin felt his destroyer shudder as another alien energy beam tore through the hull. Half of his ship was gone, vented to the vacuum of space, but he remained at his command post, sealed in his emergency suit. Through the jagged hole in his ship's side, he could see the stars and the burning wrecks of human vessels. "Sir, we need..." To abandon ship, his communications officer pleaded over the radio. "The reactor is failing, and we've lost life support." "Negative," O replied, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. "We still have engines, don't we?" "Yes, sir, but barely. I can't fight like this." O smiled grimly inside his helmet. "Who said anything about fighting? Set course for that alien cruiser." "Maximum burn." The wounded destroyer lurched forward, its remaining engines pushing the broken vessel toward a massive hegemony warship. The alien cruiser was 3 times larger than O's ship, its hull gleaming with weapons that could have destroyed the human vessel with ease. But the aliens hesitated, confused by the approach of what appeared to be a dying ship. "All hands, this is the captain," O announced over the ship's intercom. "It's been an honor serving with you. Now let's show these aliens what humans do when we're cornered." The destroyer struck the alien cruiser amidships, its broken hull acting like a giant spear that punched through the enemy's armor. The impact crushed both vessels, creating an expanding ball of fire and debris that lit up the battlefield like a second sun. Across the solar system, similar scenes played out as human forces demonstrated their unique approach to warfare. The hegemony's perfectly coordinated fleets began to fracture as their commanders struggled to understand an enemy that refused to follow any known rules of combat. Lieutenant Colonel Yusiojin crouched in the boarding tube of a captured alien transport, her squad of Marines preparing to cut through the enemy ship's hull. They had taken the vessel 10 minutes ago, but instead of trying to hold it, they had a different plan. "Remember, we're not here to capture prisoners," she told her team. "We're here to make them afraid." The Marines cut through the hull and poured into the alien ship, their weapons blazing. But this wasn't a normal boarding action. Instead of trying to take control of the vessel, they were turning it into a weapon. Explosive charges were placed throughout the ship, while the Marines broadcast terrifying war cries that echoed through the alien corridors. The hegemony crew had never experienced anything like it. For 1,000 years they had fought species that followed civilized rules of warfare. Prisoners were taken, ships were captured intact, and battles were won through superior technology and tactics. But humans fought like wild animals, turning every engagement into a nightmare of chaos and destruction. "They're not trying to win," reported one alien captain in panic. "They're trying to terrify us." The captured transport, now packed with explosives, and guided by a single human pilot, rammed into the side of a hegemony command ship. The explosion was so powerful it cracked the alien vessel's spine, sending it spinning out of control. Park Min-ho watched the battle unfold from the bridge of his command ship, a hybrid vessel built from human engineering and alien technology. The sight should have filled him with horror, but instead he felt a cold satisfaction. For 200 years, the hegemony had kept humanity caged like animals. Now they were learning what caged animals could do when they broke free. "Sir, the alien formations are breaking up," reported his tactical officer. "They're starting to retreat." "No," Park replied, his voice hard as steel. "They're not retreating, they're running." The difference was important. A retreat was organized, controlled, part of a larger strategy. But what the hegemony fleets were doing was pure panic. Ships abandoned their formations, commanders stopped coordinating with each other, and some vessels simply powered down their weapons and tried to hide among the asteroids. "They don't fight like any species we've encountered," transmitted a panicked hegemony commander on an open channel. "They turn everything into a weapon, their ships, their bodies, their dying breaths." The transmission was intercepted by human forces across the battlefield. Many of the crew members smiled grimly as they heard the fear in the alien's voice. After centuries of being treated as primitive savages, it felt good to be the ones inspiring terror. Park opened a channel to the fleeing alien fleets, his voice carrying across the void to every hegemony ship in the system. "This is Commander G. Park Min-ho of the United Earth Defense Force. You came here expecting to face a weak, primitive species. Instead, you found something you've never encountered before, species that refuses to be conquered. He paused, watching as more alien ships broke off from the battle and began fleeing toward the edge of the system. For 1,000 years, you've maintained your peace through strength, crushing any species that dared to resist. But you made one mistake. You assumed that strength was the only thing that mattered in war. The human fleet began moving forward, chasing the retreating aliens. But they weren't just pursuing defeated enemies. They were sending a message to the entire galaxy. You wanted peace through strength? Park broadcast to the fleeing alien fleets. You got war through fury. And now you know the difference. Battle of Sol was over, but the war for galactic freedom had just begun. The hegemony had learned that some species would rather die fighting than live in subjugation. And they were about to discover that humanity's fury was just getting started. The news of humanity's victory at Sol traveled faster than light across the galaxy. Within days, every world under hegemony control knew that the impossible had happened. The peacekeepers had been defeated, their mighty fleets scattered like leaves in a storm by a species they had dismissed as primitive savages. On the mining world of Kepler for Forteby, Velkari workers stopped their machines and looked up at the sky. For 300 years, they had labored in the toxic mines, a proud warrior culture crushed under the weight of hegemony protection. Now, for the first time in centuries, they remembered what it felt like to hope. "The humans did it," whispered Velkari foreman Grakdal to his work crew. "They actually broke free." The hegemony overseer, a tall, gray alien with cold black eyes, struck Grakdal across the face with his energy rod. "Get back to work. This changes nothing. The humans will be crushed soon enough." But the overseer's voice lacked its usual confidence. Everyone could hear the fear hiding beneath his words. The hegemony had built their empire on the belief that resistance was futile, that their overwhelming strength made rebellion impossible. Now that belief was cracking. On the ocean world of Proxima Centauri C, the aquatic Morgoth began gathering in the deep trenches, their bioluminescent bodies creating patterns of light that had been forbidden for centuries. They were war songs, battle chants their ancestors had sung before the hegemony came and declared their culture too. Aggressive for galactic peace. The rebellion started small. A few workers refusing orders here. A transport ship going missing. There, but news of each act of defiance spread, inspiring others to take their own stands. The perfect order the hegemony had maintained for 1,000 years began to crack at the edges. On Earth, Admiral Lee Siakman sat in his office, reading reports from across the galaxy. The old admiral looked tired, aged by the weight of what humanity had accomplished. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Sol, and the hegemony was finally ready to talk. "Sir, the hegemony delegation has arrived," reported his aide, Lieutenant Kim Min-jae, requesting immediate negotiations. Lee smiled coldly. "Let them wait. After 200 years of imprisonment, they can sit in orbit for a few hours." When the meeting finally took place, it was held aboard the UES Retribution, humanity's newest dreadnought. The massive ship was a hybrid of human engineering and captured alien technology, its hull bristling with weapons that could crack moons. Admiral Lee chose it deliberately, wanting the hegemony to see what their former prisoners had become. The alien delegation consisted of 3 species: the tall, gray hierarchy, who had led the hegemony for centuries, the insectoid collectors who managed their economy, and the energy-based architects who designed their weapons. All 3 species had considered themselves superior to humanity. They sat across from Lee like students before a teacher. Admiral Lee began the hierarchy representative, its voice translated by mechanical speakers. "We come seeking peace. The conflict between our peoples has gone too far. Surely we can find a diplomatic solution." Lee leaned back in his chair, studying the aliens with cold eyes. "Diplomatic solution? You mean like the diplomacy you offered the Cathara? Or the Velkari? Or the 41 other species you eliminated?" The aliens shifted uncomfortably. Their entire philosophy was based on the idea that might made right, that superior strength justified any action. But humanity had shattered that philosophy with brutal efficiency. "We offer you membership in the hegemony," the hierarchy continued. Full rights, equal status with our founding species. Your people will have freedom to travel the galaxy, establish colonies, trade with other worlds. In exchange for what? Lee asked, though he already knew the answer. In exchange for ending this rebellion, your example has inspired other species to resist our authority. The galaxy needs order, Admiral. Without our guidance, there will be chaos. Lee stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars that had been forbidden to humanity for so long. You're right about one thing. The galaxy does need order, but not your order. He turned back to face the delegation. The age of peace through strength is over. Any species that threatens the freedom of others will face the fury of Earth. The negotiations ended within an hour. The hegemony delegation left with nothing but threats and warnings, their proud demeanor replaced by barely concealed fear. Had come expecting to dictate terms to a primitive species. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that refused to be intimidated. 6 months later, Captain Park Min-ho stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching as the liberation of Kepler 44 to be reached its final stage. The hegemony garrison had surrendered without a fight, their ships fleeing as soon as the human fleet arrived. Below, the Valkyrie workers were celebrating their freedom for the first time in 3 centuries. We didn't just break their blockade, observed Dr. Hanjuan, standing beside him on the bridge. We broke their entire philosophy. Park nodded, watching the celebration on the planet's surface. Human Marines were working alongside Valkyrie warriors, helping to restore their ancient culture and rebuild their shattered cities. It was a scene being repeated across the galaxy, as more and more worlds threw off the chains of hegemony control. They thought peace could be maintained through fear, Park said quietly. We showed them that some things are worth fighting for, no matter the cost. The galaxy had learned a harsh lesson. For 1,000 years, the hegemony had maintained order through overwhelming strength, crushing any species that dared to resist. But they had never faced a species like humanity, one that refused to accept defeat even when faced with impossible odds. Now, as human fleets spread across the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as liberators, the old order was crumbling. The hegemony's perfect peace was ending, placed by something far more precious, the freedom to choose one's own destiny, and in the depths of space. Where the light of distant stars illuminated the wreckage of alien warships, the galaxy learned that sometimes the only way to preserve true peace is to be willing to wage war. And no species wages war quite like humanity,